Welcome to Powering SMB, the premier podcast by XenTegra One.
We're here to turbocharge your journey through the realms of business strategies, emerging technologies, and the secret sauce of customer experience.
Stay tuned as we decode the complexities, celebrate the milestones, and equip you with the tools, inspiration, and cutting-edge insights to skyrocket your business dreams.
This is Powering SMB.
All right. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. Sean Washington here. We're with Powering the SMB. Today we are joined by a little group of folks today, all around the technology and the end user compute world. We got Ray Anderson, is one of our solution architects that specializes in user computing at XenTegra. And also joining is Jason Hendron, who is an engineer from IGEL, who's one of our partners that helps power our end user compute. So our format's going to be a little bit different today. We're not going to do a blog review. We are going to reference a blog that was more of a press release when IGEL announced on their latest version, their platform version 12, that they are supporting Parallels RAS. So just want to remind everybody to take it off mute. We will be asking you to chat. So yes, thanks for joining us. Wanted to start with just a couple comments because I don't know if our audience is going to be 100% familiar with IGEL and all these different end user compute technologies. So IGEL, for the most part, is what I like to call a zero trust operating system. So run it on your local machines to facilitate a virtual desktop or virtual applications or secure web browsers, whatever it might be, a combination of all of those. So this was the press release. Quote from Jim Erdo, Senior Vice President of Alliances at IGEL. Together, IGEL OS and Parallels RAS creates a comprehensive and secure virtualization and endpoint management solution. By making Parallels RAS available via the IGEL app portal, we are enabling our customers to benefit from the full power of Parallels RAS to support a hybrid work environment with the cloud direct download efficiency. So that's a lot of words, and if you're not a person that's familiar with this, that's going to be relatively confusing. So I kind of wanted to start with this, and I'm going to just be devil's advocate here and create this virtual conversation. I'm the guy that doesn't know anything about the bits and bytes. I am not an engineer, but what we got here joining us are three absolute experts. So I go back to the concept of what a zero trust operating system is. This would be the IGEL software. Anyone want to maybe take a stab at explaining that to our audience?
I'm going to take a guess and say that Jason can probably give us the best IGEL elevator pitch out of the group.
Well, thanks. So, yeah, I mean,
sorry, I'm going to set you up there.
No, IGEL's a secure read-only Linux operating system. So we've moved to a more modular approach where the base OS itself is an application, and we only install what you need. So we've got the base operating system being read-only, and then in this case with Parallels RAS, an application through our portal which you install. To give access to your Parallels RAS environment. So it makes it really, really small as far as the footprint is concerned, and secure.
And if I can add there, sorry, Sean, if I can add there, Jason, that's wonderful. What I've always liked about the IGEL solution is the fact that if we take a look at the traditional way that we deliver our applications to our end users, they're including third-party contractors we might do business with, that has been a Windows operating system. And as we all know, that Windows operating system comes with, a lot of overhead on the management side, the administration side, but also a lot of security risk to be aware of. And so what I've always liked about starting at a 30,000-foot view, and I'm going to bring us down really, starting with the IGEL operating system, as you were mentioning, Jason, being a read-only operating system. What does that mean? A Linux read-only operating system. And I've had various folks ask me, what exactly does that mean? And go ahead, Sean.
Oh, I finished your thought, but I wanted to interject when you were done.
Sure. So what that means is, it's truly read-only and secure, because the end user has no access to the underlying Linux file system. So again, additionally, what that means is there's no opportunity to install applications, make changes that the user could traditionally do on a Windows endpoint. So that's what I found very powerful about the IGEL operating system solution, as well as, hey, if I have made an investment in a virtualization solution such as Parallels, Citrix, VMware, and the list goes on and on, why is it that I need to provide a full-blown Windows desktop on either a laptop or a desktop, even a thin client in some cases, right? Some folks agree that just doesn't make sense, especially nowadays. And so with IGEL, you guys provide that, hey, all I need is the Parallels client and the settings in the operating system. And from a centralized management console, IT can quickly configure and immediately turn on that client within the OS on the endpoint. That is very, very compelling and attractive versus the incumbent or the traditional desktop.
Absolutely, 100%.
I wanted to take one step backwards just for a second, guys. We may have gotten ahead of ourselves a little bit. So we're talking heavily about IGEL. So IGEL is the operating system that is a facilitator of end user compute or virtual desktops or applications. The other component of our conversation is Parallels RAS. So if you're not familiar, Parallels is a company that's very well known for being a Mac desktop virtualization, so you can run Windows on a Mac. But what a lot of people don't know is that they have a full enterprise play to deliver virtual apps and desktops, a type of solution that is very similar to Citrix or VMware Horizon, things that play in that model. We love the solution. We have found that it is particularly good with the SMB because it bundles in a lot of different values in a single affordable license that caters really to the SMB, but still delivers the enterprise features and security, et cetera. And even before I do get in there, I mean, this is powering SMB. This is a conversation that is catered to a small and medium-sized business audience. There's two different parts of XenTegra. So XenTegra works with a lot of enterprise accounts. When you work with the enterprise accounts, they have IT directors that have very specific strategy, and they go out and they evaluate 1 million different vendors to power their business, right? When we engage with our small and medium-sized business customers, it's a different conversation because we're either working with a single IT person or we are working with folks that are starting up a business. They're directors of operations or CEOs, and they're turning to us, and we have a conversation about them, what a modern workforce looks like. And when I say modern workforce, I'm saying, you're in the office, you're also hybrid work from home, or vice versa, or a combination of all. And what kind of tools you need to effectively secure your data, to secure your property, et cetera, et cetera. And these are the types of tools like zero trust, identity management, cybersecurity tools, et cetera, et cetera. And IGEL and Parallels play, right hand in hand in delivering that and kind of checking a lot of those boxes.
Can
I
interject there?
I
think you're describing it well, but I kind of want to dumb it down just a little bit further. Yeah. Right? Let's just look at it this way. I'm a small business. I might have some machines that I bought for my employees. I might be hiring new folks. That the idea of like this whole BYOD thing is becoming super popular, right? I need a guy to come in and do some work for me on the part-time. He has a machine at home or she has a machine at home. How do I know that that machine remotely is going to be secure enough to be able to touch my data, right? That's the bottom line. I need to hire somebody quick, or I need to hire a temporary person quick.
Mhm.
How do I know that the person that's connecting into my remote network is secure? I like IGEL just for the fact, from a security guy, we call that a attack surface, right? If I'm a bad guy and I'm trying to infiltrate someone's network, usually the place where it's going to happen first is on the end user's device. It's the most common place to get hacked, right? On your local laptop, because let's face it, a lot of folks are just not thinking about that sort of thing, right? They boot up their Windows machine and they just assume everything's going to be great. I'm going to connect, it's going to be fine. It's usually not. That's when the trouble begins, right? IGEL has a solution that I love. It's called a UD Pocket. I'm holding one right now in my hand. Little USB device. You basically plug it in your Windows machine. It allows it to be rebooted into this read-only operating system. So talking again about this attack surface, right? A place to be able to, for hackers to get. When you boot with this device, there ain't no attack surface left. It's a read-only operating system. The Windows that your local machine has no longer exists. It's just this. And it's going to connect in to a remote location where we're going to store all of your critical data, where we can really control the security and the access to that data, right? So it kind of gives people the peace of mind that their data is protected. I think that a lot of folks don't get that, but I think if I can give anybody for small business one concept, that's the golden ticket right there, right? That's your easy button for hiring people in a new world economy where, you might not be providing them a machine. SMBs a lot of times don't. It's BYOD. This solves that problem. Another thing I wanted to, and I swear I'll give you guys back a little time because I do like to talk, but that press release in particular is very exciting to me. And I don't think a lot of people maybe understand what they're saying about that. But in the old days of these kinds of environments, every time you made a change, you'd have to literally reload this USB stick every time any change came out. So you'd be constantly in this situation of patching and rebuilding. The way the new IGEL system works is when they have an update, it only updates a small component. So you don't have to reload the entire USB stick, as it allows them to be much more efficient on patching their environment and adding features without causing a lot of downtime for the end user, which is huge. Again, I'm all about simplicity. IGEL 7 definitely IGEL 12. I don't know where I came up with 7. IGEL 12 goes a long way to solving that particular problem.
Mark, and that's important. I'm glad you brought that up, because going back to that business owner in an SMB company, right? That really, they're in the business to run a company. They're not in the business of IT. And so that's where, a solution like IGEL and then using Parallels RAS, right? That's where those type of solutions are very compelling and key, because now what we do is we can help to give back that time. Mr. Business Owner, do what you do best, run your business, right? And we brought to you a simplified solution that isn't going to take as much time and effort on your part, or really having to go out and hire, a full-time employee to come in and put this environment together to run my business. Maybe I only need somebody part-time, or I can lean on somebody like XenTegra One to help to manage that environment. But now I've taken what I'm not in the business of doing, which is to create and run IT, and I've simplified it a whole lot with a solution like IGEL.
Yep. I said it better myself. And I think that what makes it even more compelling from our perspective is we've even tried to simplify the onboarding of that. And IGEL's been cool enough to allow us to basically rent licensing to small business on a monthly basis to also kind of help this process along further. XenTegra One has, and XenTegra LLC for that matter, both of us have our own shared hosting environments specifically built for IGEL. So one of the barriers that, maybe a small business might be running into is, I don't know how to set this stuff up. Well, the good news here is you don't have to. You know, we've
And see,
taken care of that part for you as well, right?
There's another
there's
great point, right? Not only do we have a solution that is simplified for the customer, right, for the business, but now IGEL is a company that partners with folks like us, you know, MSPs, you know, hosting services, right? And they've actually created that simplified management side of the solution. So now really as an SMB owner, I can take a step back and go, wow, I now have what I would call a cradle to grave solution stack, you know, all encompassing. I have an endpoint easily deployed. I can send hardware out to any one of my employees or folks I do business with or need access to my business. And through a service such as yours, Mark, you know, they can go through an enrollment process that's real simplified. And now that device is onboarded, you know, profile settings are automatically pushed down. And now that employee is within minutes accessing my information, my data securely, and off to the races.
It's the easy button.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Right here, Mark.
Yeah, he's touching.
You must have an easy button. I've got one somewhere.
You know, on that, you know, you talk about the barriers of entry, and you talk about the configuration of technology. Of course, we can help with that. The other components too are vetting vendors. You know, because if you look at the cybersecurity landscape or the IT landscape, there are thousands of different vendors and a lot of marketing noise within there. So we've already done our homework. We've already built solutions that we know work. So the client doesn't have to worry about that. The other component too is licensing. So most of these enterprise licenses, clients are going to have to go out there and spend money up front. So if you're a startup and you're limited with the amount of capital that you have that's budgeted or, you know, an initial investment or whatever, you don't want to go out and blow that entire amount on licensing up front. So the what we can do with that, and what we've worked out with almost every single vendor we do business with, is the ability to lease those back to the clients as a monthly operational expense. So it gets amortized over the course of an entire agreement instead of just, you know, let's spend $200,000 or $300,000 up front, then put all the pieces together. It's that turnkey easy button, and it's light on the wallet.
Right. It's literally built in a way that allows that business owner to say, hey, I know that if I bring on 3 more employees, my cost per employee is a very fixed number that I can understand. I don't have to think about any of it other than, hey, it's, you know, give me a figure. I'm not the sales guy here, Sean, but roughly, what, you know, can you give me a number?
$100.
$100. Okay, let's say $100. I like that. It's $100 an employee. Every time I hire a new employee, it's $100 a month. And included in that $100 is going to be the hosting of the application for them, their licensing, their device. It's a simple way to be able to kind of at least, you know, forward plan, think about how you would do your hiring and your IT spend, which is awesome. And it's consumption based. So if you're not using it, you know, you're not paying for it, so to speak. You're not being forced to buy a gigantic license and hope to grow into it situation. It's literally built for your employees.
Many years ago, there was a shift in a part of IT around the phone systems. So phone and internet, you know, and the phone providers were always real big on, you know, you buy your phone, you buy your internet, and then you're going to have to buy a PBX. And there's going to be a whole PBX vendor involved. And then, of course, all the phone vendors started transitioning to voice over IP and creating a whole hosted platform with different softwares revolved around it, and just became an easy button where they can include everything for a monthly fee. We're just going to basically take the rest of IT, lump that together, make it virtual and as flexible as possible.
Yeah. The sad part about that is the phones come with us because nobody ain't using the phone anymore. I don't know how many times I've walked into a building anywhere and seen an actual physical phone. You're like, wow, I forgot what one of those looked like, you know?
Well, even at home too. Do you
rotary phone and you go, wow, what is that? Now
So
a normal phone, I can't find one anywhere. If you're not holding a cell phone, and these kinds of meetings we're doing right now, this is the new normal. So yeah, part of that solution of consolidation is huge, right?
Absolutely.
Doesn't make the phone vendor happy about it, but it is what it is. That's life.
Well, I like to look at it forces them to evolve their business, right? And evolve their business models, adapt to the changes in the working world or life in general, right? How we do business and how we interact. Because going back to the phone, Mark, like, do you even have a traditional phone at your home?
Heck no.
No.
Haven't had it in probably
Right?
10 years. Yeah.
Exactly, right. So
Antiquated piece of
I like to
equipment.
look at that as those changes are really not shouldn't be threatening to the manufacturers or the providers, but a point of evolution for them. How are they going to adapt to that new model?
Yeah.
Part of running a business, you got millennials and Gen Z folks coming into the workspace. And my understanding is by 2015, 25% of the entire workforce will actually be Gen Z. It's a huge number. And these are, from our perspectives, young folks, right? If you want them to come work for your company, there's going to have to be a high-tech component. So if you have an old dusty phone or some janky old software and weird workflows that aren't integrated, some of these guys are going to look at you sideways because they're used to easy buttons. They're used to things just working. So I actually just recently did a forum where we talked about kind of the hybrid workforce and the struggles that businesses are facing as far as this. And there was a couple different things we highlighted. It was whether it's cultural, business, or technology, right? So technology is the tools and the brains and everything, putting it together. Culture is what I was just kind of talking about, making sure that you're providing, good technology to these young folks, but also enabling them to, work from home, because there's not a single person that wants to come back to an office. And raise your hand if you're working in an office here. It ain't happening, right?
What's that?
You can tell by my background, I ain't in an office.
But I mean, like the office is now, somewhat confined to a home office, a physical office, and a digital workspace at the same time. The digital workspace can be delivered in many different ways, but this is kind of the concept we're talking about here. And the last part was the business side of it. I've already invested $1 million into this office, and I need the people to come here because I already made this investment. Sorry, you're just gonna have to move on and embrace the future.
But I think it goes hand in hand with what the future expects too. You got to think about, like, I hear the word compliance so much in the day to day, that sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night screaming it out loud, because it's just like it's a never ending thing, right? Every single customer I talk to, regardless of size, regardless of industry practically anymore, they're being held to a new standard of data protection and holding on to data in a higher level of security than any of these folks have ever had to deal with. They're all being forced to buy stuff like cyber insurance, all this stuff they've never thought about, because this is the new normal. I think that a product like these is what is the game changer for a lot of folks, because it is, again, that easy button, right? If I know that I'm going to be held to a standard of having to really hold on to that data, products like Parallels, products like IGEL simplify that process considerably, and that's kind of just kind of something people have to embrace. But I mean, you're right with Gen Z and millennials, they don't want to come to the office. A lot of times they want to use their laptop. Products like this help bridge that gap to kind of make it a more attractive company to work for when you're giving them the tools that allow a little bit of a compromise on both ways, right? You're protecting your data, you're actually being better about how you're being a controller of your data by using a product like this, but you're also enticing the younger crowd that wants to work from home, maybe doesn't want to use a company laptop, that kind of thing.
So Mark, we clearly work with the SMB, and we also work with a lot of startups. So how many times, and I mean, I know you're gonna have to actually answer this question, but I mean, pretty much every time we go and talk to these clients, they're in startup mode and there's no IT there. So the first thing they do is they buy their domain, they buy their email. It's usually coming from GoDaddy all in one shot, right? And
Yeah,
No,
I'm
they
sorry.
it's either
Why do
Google,
people just go to GoDaddy right away? I mean, come
they
on.
get good commercials. So yeah, it's either it's Microsoft 365 or it's Google Workspaces, and that's their cloud solution, right? They have
True.
no identity management. There's no single sign-on. There's no multi-factor. They're working on computers that they bought at Best Buy. That is what you do when you're a startup. And sure, that gets you to a certain point, but then when you start talking about compliance, there's all these other things that they are not necessarily thinking about, that they would probably never even ask those questions unless someone posed it to them.
Yeah,
So
and that's
not really
I
a
think for
question
most
I see.
startups, that's certainly what we see. I mean, we deal a lot in the biotech space in San Diego, a lot in the semiconductor space, guys that are being held to a lot of intellectual property stuff that they're very guarded with. And they're also having sometimes patient data, things like that, if it's medical. They need to be able to both entice new employees to come and work, but they also need to be able to control and have this stuff safely secured. These solutions work great for that.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about some of the features of IGEL and it facilitating these end user compute products. We understand that it is like a what I call a zero trust operating system. It's not going to get corrupted. You're not going to be able to write to it. It's a conduit to a cloud solution. We did talk about updating apps. Now that probably to the general audience out there is probably wondering, okay, why would an operating system that's just communicating out to a cloud need apps?
You guys want to take that? Someone want to take that? I can answer, but I think you guys probably are more technically. Well, you could explain the reasoning. All right, I'll jump.
Go
Jump
ahead,
on. Yeah, I'm thinking.
No,
through
you don't know
that.
what
And would they
You're
just
on the
need
back
apps?
end,
I
right?
was gonna say earlier that there, when you were talking about the telephone specifically, that there's an app for that. I mean, just a really quick story. I moved recently, and I had jumped on the UMA. If anybody knows who UMA is, it's a voice over IP home internet phone solution. And when we moved, we packed up the little answer machine that came with it and the phones. And when we moved back, I was pulling this stuff out of the box and plugging it back up and realizing that, we never really used it while we were, in some temporary housing. But when we plugged it back up, I said, I was playing the messages on the physical UMA box, and I was one by one playing them. And then then it dawned on me that there's an app for that. And I went and downloaded the UMA app and was able to go through and clean up all of that stuff, right? So ultimately, yeah, and that's where even IGEL comes in now, is in the preventative security model is the base OS, which is an application, and then only the apps you need to, only install what you need, and keep it streamlined and simple and small.
So give me an example of what maybe an app would be. What app would people use on an IGEL OS?
So certainly Parallels, right? As we're talking about the remote application, server application, the client, but also maybe you've got SaaS-based applications that you access. So you just use the browser. So we support Chromium, Firefox, and soon Edge on IGEL OS. So you can use a browser as well to access your browser-based applications. And even here, I'm running Zoom directly on my IGEL OS device for this webinar, right? So, whatever app you need, there's several that you can use, right? Those are just a few that come to mind.
I think that's a good one to point out, though, Jason, that you're literally doing this webinar, and you look great. Like your video looks great, your audio sounds great, and you're doing that from an IGEL device. Like literally, there's no Windows Zoom client, there's no nothing. You're literally in an IGEL device using a web conferencing tool, and from our perspective, we would have no idea that is
right
any different than anything else, which is pretty awesome.
Well, unbeknownst to all of you, the questions I were asking, I got thumbs down. Questions I was asking was actually a segue to talk about this specifically. So everyone has a relative or something that's used Citrix. They've worked for a big company or a university, and they may always say something. You might, yeah, it's kind of nice, but it's a pain in the neck. because I have to do a certain application. I got to log into this thing every time, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it doesn't work good. Other people get it and it works very well. And then they try running a Zoom call or a Teams call or voice over IP through a virtual environment. So is what you're saying that if you run an application on the IGEL, it will help the performance with that?
Two ways to approach that. One is that, yet in some instances, yes, it makes sense to run the full application on the IGEL endpoint. But one of the things that IGEL does as well is we optimize the communication. So rather than install the full application, we install plugins, right, for those, for say Zoom or WebEx or Teams, and optimize those virtual channels in the virtual desktop, right? So you can then run, and essentially we're offloading that to the local client, but playing it in the, you know, in the virtual desktop.
I think that's an important concept for people to grasp. So they're potentially running a virtual desktop somewhere. So it looks like a Windows desktop, but in reality, that's running at a data center somewhere or a public cloud. They click on from inside that view, they're clicking on Teams. And what magically happens with IGEL is it sees that you're launching Teams and then basically utilizes the local hardware to be able to make it seem that that's running locally from that desktop in the cloud.
And that could be key, Mark, in that, you know, if we're talking about like a small to medium-sized business that might not have the resources within their data center to run those applications we're speaking of that can be resource intensive. You know, we have endpoint devices, the IGEL devices that have the hardware that can, you know, handle that traffic and handle that processing. Hey, why not just, you know, let it pass on down to the endpoint, the IGEL endpoint, to run it, right, and alleviate or offload that load from the servers in the data center.
Yep, and that's the beauty of having, again, the newest version of IGEL that allows you to constantly be updating those small components to make sure they're the best possible versions of themselves.
Right. To take advantage of that, ultimately, those
another
plugins
use case. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
I was just going to just elaborating on what Mark just said, is that, you know, in order to take advantage of those optimizations, the plugins on the endpoint need to match what's in the virtual environment. So and IGEL drastically simplifies that with, you know, by allowing you to update those plugins independent of the operating system and really small updates.
So
another great use case.
Button.
Oh, go ahead, Sean.
I'm just saying it's an easy button, wouldn't you say?
Right. Absolutely.
What I was going to say, another great use case in line with your question about, you know, applications, is if my users use SaaS applications. You know, I have a large group of call center folks distributed throughout North America, and all they need is a web browser to connect to a call center app. Instead of following the traditional model of publishing a browser like Edge or Chrome in a virtualization session in my data center, IGEL has that browser resident on the endpoint. And so now what I can do is I can easily enable that browser, and I can even hard code that link within that browser session for the end user. So when the end user comes in, they launch the browser from the local endpoint. They don't have to log into a virtualization session in the data center. So that's what I find really, really compelling about IGEL as well, is how they can do that, how they can make that shift when needed.
Yeah, they have killer features for segregation per user, right? Or per group. So if some folks are going to need a full-blown desktop because of the nature of whatever they're doing in their job. There's a lot of use cases where you could say, hey, you're a temporary employee, like say tax season, that's coming up, right? Your H&R Block, you've got to have 50 million copies of TurboTax sitting in front of you, right? But when that guy's working, what does he really need? He might need a phone, you know, some kind of phone system on that screen. He's going to need his TurboTax, and he's going to need, I don't know, maybe a web browser for looking up some stuff as he's looking around. Short of that, he doesn't need a full-blown desktop. Literally, you could achieve everything that they're looking for with IGEL. You know, you could give them a local browser so that it doesn't take up space at the data center, doesn't impact anything there. You can give them that tax software via Parallels, right, as an application, not a full-blown desktop, but just the app. So there'll be a little icon that looks like it's TurboTax local, but it's not. It's when you double click on that, it's launching that at the data center and then presenting it inside of IGEL. And then the same thing with Teams or whatever, you know, like you can offload as much of that as you need to make that streamlined, you know.
Yeah.
I love that aspect of it.
And you know what you made me think about right there, Mark, is if I'm that tax preparer and I use multiple applications in a busy time of the year, you know, one monitor just isn't going to do the job for me. And so now can I use multi-monitor? Can I use 4 monitors? Be more efficient at what I do? And with IGEL, that's definitely a yes. You know, the ability just to plug in monitors as you have them or you need them, and IGEL recognize them, the OS, and be able to provide those like you would on a normal Windows desktop.
Sure. Yeah, and we've actually a use case that just popped up recently was with multi-monitor was with IGEL. The customer was using 2 laptops, one laptop for accessing a virtual desktop in a secure environment that did not have a web browser, and then they literally had another laptop that they were using with a local browser. So with IGEL, we just simply repurposed one laptop and allowed them to plug in an external monitor. And because of the high customization ability, instead of some users wanting to expand that virtual desktop across multiple monitors, we said, well, we want to snap your virtual desktop to one monitor and then let them use a local browser on that laptop on another monitor, right? So the local browser is not in that secure virtual desktop. They can browse where they want to, not save cookies, not do tracking, clear the cache, all of those things, and make even browsing locally secure. But then, get rid of a device. IGEL saves them money there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there a limit to how many I know there's got to be, but what's the limit on monitors, external monitors there?
I have not heard of a total upper limit. I've six is about where I've seen them go, but I believe we can definitely go higher.
Yeah, I mean,
it ultimately is down to the hardware. It's ultimately down to the hardware.
Holy crap! What are you running?
Yeah,
right. That's a lot of monitors.
Last I checked, it was like 8 monitors that the OS supports. Yeah, but then it comes down to, how you configure that on the hardware side, and if the hardware will support it.
That's crazy town. I would love to see 8 monitors in front of me like that, just a giant ball.
I'm working my way there, man.
You say that, and then you see the new Samsung, the Samsung monitor, the Odyssey. That's the 57-inch, the gigantic, curved, beautiful, multi 4K. I mean, you could do multiple 4K. It's a 4K monitor, but you can do multiple 1080p sessions on it, right? So, seamless. It's incredible.
Now you're talking about a modern workspace.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I mean, the thing is these applications are very powerful, and they eliminate a lot of the stigma around using these types of services, and add a lot of value. And one thing I just kind of wanted to juxtapose a couple things. One thing that comes up all the time with us is the concept of identity management and wrapping ZTNA around endpoints from people working at home. So these people are not using traditionally virtual systems, but they need to add all this additional licensing to their endpoints to make sure that they can securely connect to their applications and their data, right? So with IGEL, for all intents and purposes, facilitates pretty much all of that.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Absolutely has integration.
For sure.
Everything you talked about. The wonderful thing about the IGEL endpoint or OS is, you're typically using some type of virtualization solution. Well, that's your authentication point. So now you no longer have to worry about authentication at the endpoint or the IGEL desktop. An end user walks up, they see a desktop icon, my app, they launch it, boom, And that's where they get the authentication. So that's where it helps to really then offload a lot of what you would normally have to configure on the endpoint. When we talk about secure access, with those virtualization solutions, typically a secure remote access piece is included there, right? We talk about Parallels. Parallels has equivalent to, say, for example, Citrix NetScaler, which is the gateway piece. And so now, that same thing, that user sees that icon and double clicks it. Well, the authentication is going to happen back at the data center or at the gate. And that's where they're going to come in securely. So you don't have to rely on some type of authentication mechanism or method or a VPN even at the endpoint, right? We can help to remove that out of the picture.
Yeah, I think from an architectural standpoint, at least in my mind, it always makes more sense to me in the modern world to try to centralize as much of my data and my compute into one place where I can harden it as much as physically
Absolutely.
possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that sort of vault has been created, I'm opening up just as minimal of a access to that as humanly possible, and allowing a program like Parallels to facilitate that, and then IGEL as the endpoint for being the receiver of that content, to me is a perfect solution. There's very little that can be, I'm knocking on some wood because you never know, right? Hackers always try.
Yeah.
But I mean, as a attack surface, again, it's certainly very compelling. There's very little that you have to deal with on that end. You can really focus on that one central place you really need to harden really well, knowing that the endpoints coming in are going to be secured by default by kind of how they work, right?
Would you agree, Mark, with that being said, that now, we're talking about a solution that I don't, as a business owner or even IT, I don't have to worry about the risk of an endpoint.
You don't, and what
I don't even have to worry about that. I can, like you said, concentrate my
like
efforts.
this, you don't have to think about it because it's already hardened to begin with. What a lot of people, I think, fail to maybe put together initially too is that the cost savings involved there is huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not maintaining or patching a laptop with an RMM and a endpoint detection system, or all these kinds of security tools and remote management tools and all of that kind of junk that goes on with a traditional endpoint, it's all gone. It's all gone. So what's your price per user then? You might be paying a bit to have it in the cloud, but I guarantee you that's going to be cheaper than maintaining a local machine. There's just, in the old days, I'm not sure that financial, would have worked out as easily. But in the modern world and where we're at right here, right now, I guarantee you, there's not a customer I could find that if I architected this from day one, it's cheaper to do it this way than it would be to do the latter.
Especially when you factor in the cost of administrators' salaries to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah, you use the big picture for all of that. Yeah.
And I mean, and even when it comes down to centralizing your users' data, right, and backing it up and knowing that it's secure and not worrying about, hey, did you save that on your Windows desktop and did that get backed up? Right. I mean, we've got a central repository for you to save that file. Did you save it there? Right. Ultimately, IGEL's not a ransomware target, so to speak. Right. It's read only. Reboot goes back the way it was, but no data is being stored there either. Right. So you're ensuring that your end users are following the policies you want them to follow. Right. And then you're backing up and securing their data for them.
Yeah, the way I like to always present this to customers that are somewhat, maybe they're not as technically advanced, it's the Apple thing, right? I have an Apple phone, I have an iPad. I'm talking to you guys right now on an iMac, right? All of my data, all of my files, my information, my configuration is not actually stored on any of these devices. It's in the cloud. It's iCloud, right? If I go down the street and I leave my phone in a cab, I really don't care. They're not going to get anything out of it. It's locked. There's nothing actually stored here anyways, at least that there isn't a copy somewhere else, right? It's the same kind of concept. If I keep all of my data centrally located and I have IGEL as my device, yeah, something happens to that device, who cares? If it breaks, no biggie, you know? And even from a standpoint of like, I've got I always like the call center, it's a great one. I've got 30 people in a room. Suddenly one of the machines starts acting funny. Something's wrong with the hardware. Okay, do we have another IGEL device in a desk drawer over here that we can hand the guy? He's back up and working in 5 minutes. It's not like I have to reconfigure a laptop. I have to get the apps on the laptop. I have to install all the security tools on that laptop. All of that is completely removed.
And
right?
and that license is transferable, right? So
Yeah,
if you lose the
exactly.
device,
Yeah.
the license
Yeah.
can
No
be
big deal.
transferred to the new device without
Yeah.
losing the license.
Yep. It is truly that easy button again. I think most business owners, that's really what they want to deal with. They don't want to deal with the headaches of everything else. It's getting people I mean, it is an ongoing process. I think this is still relatively new to small business, but to me, like I said, we do POCs all the time here. Like I do at least one a week right now. I probably have at least 2 sales calls a week. Brand new, net new customer. It's never seen this kind of technology before. Generally, it's been my experience that once I demo it, the light bulb clicks in. Within 2 or 3 days, I get a call back from that same person going, you said the POC is really easy. Can we try that? And I'm like, yeah, it's the prerequisite. Here's what you need. It's not really all that much that goes to it, especially with Parallels. It's like ridiculously simple. I can set them up in an hour after they have the prereqs in place. They play with that thing for a week. It's done. I think it sells itself. People understand like, oh, wow, I see where the value is here.
Yeah.
It doesn't take too hard, but it's one thing to talk about it. I think it's another thing to see it. And once people see it, you can't not see it then.
From a sales perspective, the concept is somewhat disruptive because it's not what people are used to.
Absolutely. It's different.
So what we have to do is explain all the different features and benefits that go into this that they literally never would have thought about until we brought it to their attention. And quite honestly, I don't think the average MSP is having these conversations with anybody. I think they're talking about support and their help desk and whatever PSA is powering that and silly stuff.
To a certain degree, it's counterintuitive to their own business.
Yeah.
I
would agree.
Maybe I'm just a bit of a weirdo, but I don't mind that I'm losing some revenue as a result. I would prefer to have happy technicians and happy customers than to make a couple extra bucks selling an endpoint.
No.
What can I say? You know what I mean? Like I'd like to keep it simple. If I can get a customer that has their data centrally located, I'm using a device like IGEL to access it, there's going to be a happy customer for the next 10 years. Like it ultimately will be better off for both them and us, I think.
Well, Mark, they come back to you. It's such a reliable, consistent solution stack that, they'll continue to bring that business back to you. And hey, you know what? Word of mouth is still powerful too, right? Hey, where'd you get, that's kind of neat. Where'd you get that? How do you do that?
You
need to go talk to Mark.
Biotech, right? We're really big in biotech in San Diego. Like we're definitely a name out there in Southern California, and which is a very hot market for biotech right now. And I don't know how many businesses we've gotten in the last year as a result of these guys all talk.
Mm-hmm.
What are you guys doing? That's pretty cool. Who did that for you again? And
they're constantly splitting up. Like one company will spawn another one, and then another one, and another one, and it's all the same people. It's kind of a cool ecosystem to be involved in.
Yeah. I've definitely seemed to have a Lego kit for biotech space right now. And every time somebody calls, I'm like, okay, let me grab my Lego kit. I already know what you need. It's awesome that way.
Well, selling a product like this is kind of cool because you can kind of show people magic tricks, right?
Yeah.
You bring in this laptop and you pull up the IGEL OS, and then you say, all right, look, here we go. Here's my workspace. It follows me around everywhere I go. Pull it up, run a Zoom call, show them how great it works. Let's do a 4K YouTube video. Right?
That is always your go-to.
Yeah.
I don't know why you have a thing for that, but yeah, it's a great demo.
It's a magic trick. Yeah. People want to see the sizzle, right? So, but the benefits are not really, there's cost savings. There is the cool magic tricks. There is the efficiencies from working from home. But at the end of the day, it's a security. conversation.
Sure.
Everything that Mark just mentioned about having everything securely at a data center.
Yeah. And you can, and as they save money and repurpose devices or use an IGEL pocket, they should also know that, they can purchase devices with IGEL pre-installed.
No,
So
it's
if
a
they
great
want to
point.
expand and
Yep, that's a good
grow, we have
conversation.
Lenovo and IGEL, not IGEL.
Lenovo, LG, and
can't think
HP specifically.
LG,
You can order devices and others. You can order devices from them directly with IGEL OS pre-installed. Have them drop ship to your work from home users, and 3 or 4 clicks, and they're under management and in your secure environment. Easy.
I think it's we wouldn't serve ourselves well if we didn't have this conversation about repurposing, because you brought this up a couple times, but I wanted to make sure the audience actually knew what we're talking about here. Because let's just say you're a Microsoft shop, you have a bunch of machines that are 2-3 years old. You're looking to change your technology stack, blah, 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 right? You could, in theory, wipe all those machines, convert them to IGEL, or use the UD pocket that Mark showed before, trash out the Windows component of things, and just run your systems that way. Would you, in theory, get more life out of those systems running Linux on them?
Oh, absolutely.
Heck yeah. That's a big heck yeah. Yeah, it's a great use case. And Jason, it's a great thing to mention that too. Yeah, because I mean, that is really the thing. The UD Pocket's awesome, but like I've got a customer right now that we're rolling out, same kind of thing. To went from demo to POC to like, wow, this is cool. I want this for my entire environment. They have a bunch of older machines that are not, by today's standards, they're, from a Windows machine, they're okay. From an IGEL perspective, they're going to be hot rods. Linux doesn't require as much overhead, especially when you're limiting what applications even get installed on this thing, right? It's going to be a Parallels client, some VoIP type of, utility, a browser. That's it. It's going to work great. And that allowed them to get, maybe 3 to 4 more years life cycle out of that existing hardware. And then as they have net new, we've already talked to them about the LG makes a really slick. Is it the Gram that you can get that way? I think that's
Gram,
small. Yeah. Man, that is a nice little laptop that LG has. And it's preloaded with IGEL again. So as they buy new ones for their clients, or they have executives that want to travel and they want a machine they can just take with them that has IGEL on it, the Gram's a nice approach for that. And it just works. Again, there's nothing on that machine that can be compromised or broken. It just literally boots straight into the cloud and allows them to get their job done.
Yeah. And when it comes to mobile devices, the battery life's dramatically increased as well, right? So ultimately,
the less running on it, right?
IGEL is lightweight as it is.
12 hours straight.
Runs a lot longer.
Yeah.
So the way the ecosystem works is IGEL used to actually be, create their own hardware. They were kind of a thin client type provider with their software. They went agnostic about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah, they were on that journey for quite some time, because
but 100%,
quite honestly, customers that even had other hardware, what makes IGEL so wonderful is the management interface, the universal management, what we call the universal management suite, that makes it easy to manage one or thousands of devices. Something else, is just the ease of use and administration. But there were a lot of people that wanted that software, but didn't necessarily want the the hardware itself. So IGEL's sort of been on that journey for quite some time to be hardware agnostic and run IGEL OS on other hardware. I think the pandemic, COVID chip shortages, things like that accelerated that ultimately. But yeah.
But it was interesting, Jason, because what you just said, at the same time, not only do you make a great software stack, when you did have those hardware devices, and I'll speak of the UD3 in particular, it was great hardware. And so, when it came to that time, customers were like, what do you mean I can't get these IGEL hardware devices anymore? So it was almost like a scramble, like, well, what's the next best thing that's comparable or comparable to the UD3s? So that was quite interesting. So IGEL did, hardware and software did do a really good job on both sides.
Yeah. So now, you can go to an LG or whoever it might be, get a nice thin client, or really what's attractive is a mobile thin client, a laptop with IGEL on it that supports multiple computers. Take it wherever you want. As long as you have an internet connection, you're online.
You know what I really like too, Sean, those hardware vendors you're speaking of, LG in particular, is they just work. I mean, there's no special configuration whatsoever, because I've been there, configured them or set them up with IGEL, and the OS just goes on them, on the hardware, comes up and it runs, and you can just leave it be for another, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
I know this has been a great conversation, but we're getting to like an hour. We could talk all day about IGEL, Parallels, and small business.
I thought we were going to do that.
Have another reason to have another show. So I think maybe we should probably try to wrap it up. Definitely, I'm going to give my shameless plug here for XenTegra One. I do it every time. This particular topic, and if you want to know more, reach out. I would love to demo this stuff to you so you can see it firsthand. I've got this demo down. I can do it blindfolded with, tied up, and it's still a great demo. Fantastic product. And if you're interested, reach out. Well, we can talk to you about it and demo it and POC if you're really interested in it as well.
We'll show you some magic tricks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, once you see
I want to see Sean's YouTube TVs.
Perfect.
Anytime.
Awesome. Anything else, guys, you want to add?
No, that was a great conversation. Great
Absolutely.
Conversation.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, guys.
Love having you guys, and definitely we'll do this again.
Until next time, thank you for joining Powering SMB.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
See you guys later.
Bye.